Hey guys, tonight we head into the dusty goldfields of 1850s Australia. The air is dry and slightly smoky, the sun is relentless, and the only shade comes from crooked tents or conveniently large sheep. You're standing at the edge of Ballarat boots caked in red clay, and behind you a bullock cart groans its last wheezy breath before collapsing like a Victorian gentleman after 2 sherries. The road here was long, loud, and smelled vaguely like cabbage and fear. Ahead lies a swarm of canvas tin pans, smoke trails, and noise, the beating heart of a gold rush camp. Now you're not exactly prepared. Your hat's too small, your boots squeak, and you're clutching a how-to-pan for gold leaflet that looks suspiciously like someone's laundry list. But none of that matters because around you are thousands of people with the same wide-eyed look, all drawn here by the promise of gold. Some of them will strike it rich. Most of them will strike blisters. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, leave a comment with your location and the time you're listening. I love seeing where this sleepy little history club reaches. Now dim, the lights maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take your first steps into camp. It's not exactly elegant. A sea of tents sprawls out like someone dumped a laundry basket across a hillside. Children dart between guy ropes, trousers flapping, and someone's yelling about a missing goat. Nearby, a man with a beard longer than your future is stirring something ominous in a blackened pot. The ground squelches beneath your feet, not with mud, but with layers of crushed dreams, trampled flour, and probably some abandoned shoes. Everything smells like firewood sweat tobacco and the vague hope of a better life. You dodge a falling tent pole just in time. The man beneath it mutters a curse so creative it probably violated 3 languages. You nod politely. First day, he asks. You nod again. He hands you a bent spoon and says, "Good luck." You never see him again. Historians still argue whether the Ballarat goldfields of 1851 resembled more of a bustling frontier town or a chaotic open-air asylum. Probably both. But what's certain is that over 20,000 hopeful diggers flooded these hills within months each, with a pickaxe, a dream, and usually a completely unreasonable hat. Now, to participate in this lucrative madness, you need 3 things: a mining license, a spot to dig, and the ability to pretend you know what you're doing. You have none of those things, so naturally you just start walking in vaguely productive circles. Somewhere near the center of camp is a man who claims to have found a nugget the size of a loaf of bread. He now sells breadcrumbs for a living, which is either ironic or entrepreneurial. You overhear 2 prospectors arguing about whether it's best to dig in creek beds or under trees where wombats sneeze frequently. You nod, sagely write down sneezy wombats, prunkputst, gold, and keep walking. Soon you find a flattish patch of earth, slightly less trampled than the rest. A tent goes up, sort of. It sags like a defeated souffle, but it's home now. You realize you forgot to pack a mattress, so your first bed is a collection of bundled shirts, old newspapers, and one mysterious item that may be a hedgehog. Too tired to investigate. Outside, the noise never stops. Someone is always hammering, shouting, laughing, or singing badly. Fiddles squeak, pots clang, and every now and then a dog howls as if auditioning for Hamlet. A few feet away, a group of men are huddled around a small fire, roasting what appears to be socks. No one's brave enough to ask. You meet your first camp neighbor, a cheerful fellow who introduces himself as Toothless Mick. He offers you a cup of billy tea brewed to a consistency somewhere between asphalt and regret. You drink it anyway. It burns your tongue, and somehow your dignity too. By the firelight Mick tells you about his journey, he walked for 12 days, lost 2 boots, 3 cousins, and a good singing voice to a rogue emu. You nod sympathetically. Everyone here has a story. Some are sad, most are exaggerated, and a few involve spontaneous explosions. That night you don't sleep so much as collapse. Outside, the goldfields buzz and breathe like a living thing, rowdy, unpredictable, and full of secrets. The stars above seem too bright, too close. You wonder if one of them is watching, cheering for you. Then a possum steals your last biscuit. Welcome to the diggings. Morning comes with all the subtlety of a marching band in a broom factory. You wake up to the sound of someone yelling about a thieving wallaby, a clanging spoon orchestra, and a kettle that screams like it just found out it wasn't actually a teapot. Your back aches in places you didn't know had names. Your shirt is damp, your socks are missing, and there's a chicken asleep on your chest. You're not sure whose chicken it is. You name her Barbara. Today's priority gear. Specifically the kind that helps you find gold, or at least makes you look like you know how to find it. First, stop the tools man. His name's Cranky Alf, though he's only marginally crankier than everyone else here. His beard has its own climate system. His stall is a wooden crate with various rusting implements spread out like some kind of DIY dentist's nightmare. You ask for a pickaxe. He grunts, hands you something that might be a pickaxe or possibly a repurposed fireplace poker, and demands 3 shillings and a button. You oblige. You still don't know which button he meant. Next, you attempt to fashion some kind of shelter that won't collapse the next time a lizard sneezes. Canvas is precious, so tents are often held together with twine bootlaces and the eternal optimism of their owners. You spend an hour trying to hammer in a wooden stake, only to realize it was a breadstick someone dropped. Your home gradually becomes a charming triangle of canvas and flapping frustration supported by 1 sturdy pole, 2 suspiciously curved branches, and a pile of regret. You find some extra tin sheets and prop them against the windward side, accidentally creating an echo chamber for every nearby cough and swear word. Lovely. Meanwhile, the washing situation is, well, let's just say your shirt is starting to develop a personality of its own. You consider bathing, but bathing requires water effort and a certain emotional resilience. The creek is freezing, the washtub is occupied by a goat, and the only public bathhouse in town was recently declared a site of unusual bacterial enthusiasm. Still, hygiene has its champions. You spot one man taking a full tin bath outside his tent, whistling cheerfully as the wind whips across his goose-bumped body. His name is reportedly Clean Steve. He's the camp's unofficial weather vane and social outcast. You try to clean yourself using a damp cloth and a spoonful of sand. It's not pleasant, but it's exfoliating. You now glow faintly in the dark. The truth is, most diggers have 1 shirt, 1 pair of trousers, and an unshakable belief that soap is a conspiracy. Laundry is done by soaking your clothes in a creek until the fish start complaining, then hanging them on a bush and hoping the magpies don't steal your underwear. They will. Magpies have no shame. By midday, the sun bakes everything into a golden crust. You realize your hat, sourced from a second-hand seller named Mad Lou, is made of something that was probably intended as upholstery. It holds sweat like a sponge and smells like cooked shoes. But it's better than nothing. Mostly. Historians still argue whether life on the goldfields was primitively simple or simply primitive. Whichever it was, you're learning fast that everything you need must be begged, borrowed, or bartered. Buttons are currency. Rum is status. And a pair of dry socks can spark bidding wars that make Wall Street look polite. You sit outside your half-collapsed tent and try to sharpen your pickaxe on a rock. It mostly sharpens the rock. Barbara the chicken pecks thoughtfully at your boot. A man strolls by with an enormous wheelbarrow, in which sits a small child, a sack of flour, and an accordion. He waves. You wave back. There's no time to question anything anymore. Your evening meal consists of beans, Hope, and something that used to be a carrot. Cooking is done over an open flame with a pan that has likely seen 3 gold rushes and at least 1 murder. You watch your beans slowly disintegrate while Barbara eyes them with suspicion. Just as you think the day is winding down your neighbor Toothless, Mick, remember him, shows up with a wooden crate he swears contains a portable stove. It's just a box with holes and a place to set things on fire, but he's very proud. You help him set it up. It immediately explodes. You both laugh, mildly singed. That night, a storm rolls in, nothing dramatic, just enough to slap your tent around like an angry pudding. You huddle under your tin sheets listening to the wind whistle through every gap and wonder what on earth you've gotten yourself into. Outside, you hear singing raucous, drunk, mostly off-key. Someone starts playing the spoons. Someone else joins in with a jug. Someone else just yells potatoes in rhythm. It's either a concert or a summoning ritual. You're too tired to care. As you drift off to sleep, your fingers blistered your hair full of twigs, you realize you are now officially a digger. Welcome to the lifestyle. You wake before dawn to someone whispering licenses like it's a ghost story told around a bureaucrat's campfire. The word spreads quickly, low, urgent, and always followed by frantic shuffling. You leap from your canvas bed, nearly trip over Barbara the chicken, and shove your crumpled digger's license somewhere beneath your sweaty shirt, right next to the regret. Ah, yes. The digger's license. A piece of paper that costs more than your last 5 meals and has the uncanny ability to dissolve when it rains. Issued by the colonial government, this lovely little document gives you the privilege of digging in the dirt you're already sleeping on. No license, big trouble. Fines, arrests, maybe a stint in a makeshift jail that smells like boiled socks and authority. The license inspectors are known as traps, or simply troopers. They arrive unannounced like thunder or relatives you didn't invite, clad in red or blue coats with expressions that suggest they haven't laughed since birth. They stroll into camp with clipboards and judgment. You hear the tin rattle of sabers and boots on gravel. They're close. Like everyone else, you spring into action. Diggers scatter like possums in a bakery. A man dives into a tub of ash. Another pretends to be a log. Someone shoves themselves under a cart and starts buying. You consider following suit, but instead you duck behind a suspiciously large bush Barbara tucked under one arm, heart pounding. The inspectors pass. One of them sneezes. You whisper, "Bless you," through a mouthful of leaves. This is the dance of survival, an unspoken game between the enforcers and the enforced. You learn quickly that hiding places are valuable. There's even a map going around top 10 best shrubs for evasion. You memorize it like scripture. Historians still argue whether the harsh enforcement of the license was a legitimate attempt to maintain order or just a very expensive way to make everyone hate paperwork. Either way, the system became one of the Goldfield's most hated institutions. You finally emerge from your hiding place just in time to see someone get caught. Poor fellow License buried under his bedding somewhere. The troopers haul him off with polite force, their mustaches twitching disapprovingly. The crowd jeers softly but not too loudly. No one wants to be next. Toothless Mick sidles up beside you. "Forgot me license," he says cheerfully. "Used it as a coaster." You nod solemnly. It happens. Later that day, you attempt some stealth training. You practice diving behind rocks, rolling under wheelbarrows, and pretending to be a fence post. Barbara seems impressed. You consider opening a school for evasive maneuvers, the art of digger disappearance. Graduation ceremony to be held in a root cellar. But it's not all stress and shrubbery. You find that many diggers turn the whole ordeal into a game. Some wear fake mustaches. Others develop elaborate routines like dropping their pan and shouting, "Look a nugget," before sprinting away, while everyone, including the troopers, looks. One legend of the camp disappearing. Pete reportedly lived under a hollow tree stump for 3 months just to avoid inspection. He'd pop out at night like a confused squirrel pan for 2 hours, then vanish again. No one knows what happened to him. Some say he left for New Zealand. Others claim he became the stump. Your own license is slowly falling apart. You try to reinforce it with beeswax, but all you succeed in doing is attracting a very persistent bee named Gregory. The system itself doesn't seem to care much whether the license is visible, legible, or even real. So long as you have something to wave in the inspector's face, you're generally fine. Which leads to a booming market in forged licenses, counterfeit stamps, and at least one attempt to bribe a trooper with a drawing of Queen Victoria riding a wombat. The resentment simmers. Around campfires, the diggers grumble about fees, about fines, about having to pay the government to let them maybe find something worth selling. Voices grow louder each night. Someone starts collecting signatures. Someone else starts sewing a flag. You try not to get involved. You just want to find a nugget, buy a nice coat, and retire somewhere with fewer spiders. But it's hard to ignore the tension. The license isn't just a piece of paper anymore. It's become a symbol of injustice, of control, of how your life out here, for all its wilderness and wild hope, still has strings attached. You wander back to your tent, hands sore from holding a shovel all day. You spot Barbara asleep in a boot. You spot someone else asleep in your boot. You sigh. The night feels heavier than usual, the air thick with dust sweat, and something else you can't quite name. A sense that something's coming, something more than just troopers and broken pans. But for now you're still here, still breathing, still licensed technically. You fold the soggy paper into your pillow, wrap yourself in a canvas blanket, and try to sleep with one ear open for marching boots. Just in case. You wake to the sound of sloshing. Not rain, because that would imply the mercy of clean water falling gently from the sky. No, this is the sloshing of pans in cold creek beds, a rhythmic, almost musical splatter as hundreds of hopeful diggers swirl water and gravel to gather their movements, as hypnotic as they are increasingly desperate. It's time to try your luck. You stumble down to the creek bucket in one hand, Barbara the chicken on your shoulder, like some deranged Goldfield parrot. The water is knee-deep, glacially cold, and smells faintly of soap sweat and disappointment. You pick a spot that looks vaguely promising based entirely on the fact that someone nearby just shouted, "I think this is quartz," in a tone that suggests they've finally read the label on their pickaxe. You squat beside the stream, knees popping in protest, and scoop a panful of gravel and river sludge. And now the fun begins, swirling, tipping, sluicing the water around, waiting for the heavier gold to sink, while the lighter silt and sand wash away. You try to mimic the pros beside you. They make it look easy. You, on the other hand, look like you're mixing porridge in a blender without a lid. By the third pan, you've got the hang of it, sort of. Your wrists ache, your trousers are soaked, and you're pretty sure that one big golden flake was actually a bit of sunlit mica. Still, you persist. Because every so often someone down the creek yells and a crowd gathers. A shout, a cheer, a glint in the pan, and just like that, hope returns. Like a sneeze in a library, it spreads fast. Historians still argue whether the majority of Goldfield's success came from genuine strikes or cleverly orchestrated rumors. There's strong evidence that many nuggets were planted to attract others to dig nearby and pay for equipment or pies. But you don't care. Rumor has power, and right now that's enough to keep your pan moving. Around midday, you pause to stretch your back and wonder if you've actually discovered a new spinal shape. Your fingers are wrinkled and raw, like you've been washing dishes since the Roman Empire. Barbara clucks sympathetically, then pecks a worm from your sock. A neighbor young lad named Eli sidles over and shows you his find, a flake no bigger than a thumbnail, but oh how it sparkles. He grins like he's just bought a house. "It's me first," he chirps. "Gonna buy Ma a kettle." You nod, genuinely happy for him, even if your own pan is still full of rocks, tiny crabs, and what might be a fragment of someone's long-lost molar. You switch techniques. You try dry panning. You try adding soap to break the surface tension. You even whisper compliments to your pan. Nothing works. The gold remains elusive, like punctual stagecoaches and clean underwear. At one point, you watch a man named Clive build an elaborate wooden sluice system with 4 tiers and a little flag at the top. It looks like a gold mining version of a water park. He calls it the Goldenator. It collapses under its own weight within 20 minutes. Yet everyone keeps panning. It's part ritual, part madness, and all very muddy. You start to enjoy the rhythm: scoop, swirl, tilt, squint, sigh. Scoop, swirl, tilt, squint, sigh. The creek sings its watery song, frogs croak approvingly, and a kookaburra somewhere up a tree laughs like it knows a terrible secret. Occasionally someone finds something truly absurd. A nugget shaped like Tasmania, a piece embedded in quartz the size of a cabbage. Once an old prospector found a button, a coin, and a tiny gold tooth in the same pan. "I found a man," he declared. By the late afternoon, the sun turns everything amber. Shadows stretch. You sit by the creek, exhausted, content in your mediocrity. No great discovery, no riches, just the quiet satisfaction that comes from trying. Then you see it. At the very bottom of your pan, nestled among pebbles and muck, a speck, a shimmer. You blink, shake the pan gently, and there it is, the tiniest flake of gold imaginable. It's barely bigger than a breadcrumb, but it's yours. Your hands tremble as you pluck it free and hold it up to the light. It glows, just a bit, like a promise whispered by the earth. You hold it between finger and thumb, and without meaning to grin like a madman, Barbara poops on your shoulder. Balance is restored. You head back to camp proud. No one else may care, but that flake changes everything. You can do this. You will find more, or at least you'll keep believing it. That night you hide the flake in a sock, which you bury under your bedroll, which you cover with a pan, which you balance with a tin cup. It's a security system that would confuse even the cleverest of bandicoots. You drift off to sleep to the lullaby of distant pans, crackling fires, and someone cursing in song. Your hands are sore, your eyes are gritty, and your gold is microscopic. But you feel a bit richer all the same. You awake to music. Well, something like music. There's a fiddle being scraped with the subtlety of a feral cat, and someone attempting to keep rhythm by banging a spoon on a pan. It's camp morning, which means breakfast is mostly smoke, and entertainment is whatever noise the humans and wildlife collaborate on before noon. You sit up, brush dirt from your face, and blink at the sight of a goat in a bonnet, dancing next to a man with no trousers. You decide not to ask. Welcome to the shanties. The Goldfields have no formal town squares, no manicured parks, but they do have shanties. Ramshackle taverns made from wood scraps, canvas, and dreams soaked in rum. They go by names like the Drunken Pickaxe, Wombat and Ale, and inexplicably, the Crying Duck. Each promises 2 things: something vaguely edible and some form of music or storytelling that may or may not involve trained marsupials. You head toward one now, mostly because it smells of roasted something, and your breakfast consisted of air and a longing for biscuits. Inside, it's dark, smoky, and vibrating with laughter. A fiddler is doing his best. A one-legged man is clapping along with a pair of spoons. And behind the counter stands the queen of this chaos, Big Peg. Peg's got arms like tree trunks, a voice like gravel in honey, and a reputation for throwing out troublemakers with one hand while pouring ale with the other. You order something that might be stew, and definitely has eyeballs. It's delicious. Probably. Historians still argue whether these shanty pubs were dens of debauchery or community hubs of resilience. The truth is they were both watering holes for the tired, the lucky, the unlucky, and the perpetually optimistic. Places to laugh, cry, and occasionally dance with animals. Peg leans over the bar and squints at you. "First, Flake," she asks. You nod, producing your treasure from your sock. She examines it like a jeweler, then nods with approval. "You'll be back," she says with a grin. "They always come back." Behind you, a man starts a song about a platypus and a priest. You don't catch all the lyrics, but the chorus involves soup betrayal and surprisingly tasteful harmonies. Everyone joins in. Even Barbara, tucked in a basket at your feet, seems to cluck on beat. There's something magical about this nonsense. Outside, night begins to fall, and lanterns flicker across camp like stars that decided to drop in for a visit. You wander with your stew bowl and find a seat near a fire where stories are being passed around like cheap tobacco. A weathered old prospector with the voice of a thundercloud tells a tale about the singing kangaroo of Creswick. According to him, a kangaroo once appeared in camp, hopped on stage during a fiddle competition, and began thumping perfect rhythm with its tail. The crowd awarded it first prize and a pair of boots. It left without a word. Everyone laughs except one man who swears he saw it. Name was Kevin, he insists. Loved pie. You sip the last of your stew and watch sparks rise into the sky. The fire crackles. Someone passes a harmonica down the line. Another person juggles spoons. One particularly enthusiastic chap starts reciting Shakespeare badly, but with gusto. This is the goldfields at night, not just digging and dust, but moments of shared absurdity and human warmth. No one here has much. Some have less than that. But every song, every laugh, every strange, possibly fictional animal story is a little rebellion against the hard, cold earth that refuses to give up its treasure easily. You try your own story, a tale of a dingo that followed you for a day and then tried to steal your sock. It gets polite laughter, possibly more for your performance than your content. Peg claps you on the back. "You'll fit in just fine," she says. "Back in your tent, belly full, and fingers stained with stew, you hear music still floating through the night. It's uneven off-key and beautiful in its refusal to be anything but itself." Barbara snores gently. You realize something curious. Even if you never strike it rich, you've found something golden here. Even if it smells faintly of possum stew, you jolt awake at midnight to the sound of galloping hooves, muffled shouting, and someone yelling, "Hide the rum." You bolt upright, heart racing, tangled in your blanket, and dreams of golden nuggets shaped like Queen Victoria's nose. Barbara the chicken looks at you unimpressed. She's wearing a thimble on her head for reasons unknown. You crawl out of your tent just in time to see a horse vanish between two tents, its rider hooded cloak flapping like a theatrical villain in a bush opera. Someone mutters, "Bushrangers." Another hisses, "Hide the gold." A third says, "That was just Ted practicing for the camp play." You decide to investigate anyway. Welcome to the whispered world of bushrangers, the bandits' runaways, and occasionally very dramatic sheep thieves of the Australian outback. They haunt the gold fields like ghost stories, with pistols riding through the night with one eye on your wallet and the other on their personal branding. You've heard tales already. Everyone has. There's Gentleman Bill who robs you but leaves a thank you note and critiques your handwriting. Or Possum Jack, who allegedly lives in a eucalyptus tree and only steals boots. And then there's the most famous of them all in these parts, Mad Mick McCorkle, the bushranger who once held up an entire coach line and demanded they sing Waltzing Matilda before surrendering their coins. Historians still argue whether bushrangers were desperate criminals or anti-hero folk legends. The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere between legend and laundry mishap. You grab your shovel not for defense, but because it's the only weapon you own that doesn't squeak, and join a few diggers gathered near the fire. The tension is real, but it's laced with theatricality. No one's quite sure if there's danger or just Dave again, trying to create ambiance for his one-man show. Suddenly a shadow moves. There's a rustle near the supply cart. You raise your shovel. Someone else holds up a lantern. Another man drops a potato in panic. The light reveals a large wombat chewing thoughtfully on someone's trousers. Everyone exhales. The wombat looks mildly offended and ambles away, dragging the pants with it. False alarm. Still the mood sticks. You hear murmurs all night. Diggers taking turns keeping watch, tools sharpened, gold hidden. Some bury their flake jars under the floor of their tents. One man tucks his entire pouch into a loaf of bread. You take notes. Barbara sleeps on top of your sock vault feathers' ruffled eyes, half closed like a feathery alarm system. The truth is, goldfields were prime bushranger territory, isolated, lawless, full of valuables and not many people who could shoot straight. The official troopers tried, but often found themselves one horse short or distracted by paperwork. They'd ride into camp, take a census, lose their boots to a prank, and leave none the wiser. By morning, the rumors have evolved. Last night's intruder is now a tall man in a coat made of koalas. Someone says he stole 2 gold pans and a tin of biscuits. Someone else claims they gave him biscuits after he complimented their singing. Someone swears the horse had a monocle. You're not convinced any of it's real. But that doesn't stop you from double-knotting your bootlaces and reinforcing your tent flaps, just in case. Later that day, you take a stroll through camp trying to calm your nerves. A group of children are playing a game called Troopers and Bushies. One kid shouts, "Stand and deliver," while the others scream and throw dirt. You smile. Then duck, because one of them is unnervingly good at aim. Nearby, a wandering storyteller sets up a makeshift stage 2 barrels a plank and a flare for drama. He launches into a tale of the ghost rider of the Grampians, who allegedly roams the hills at night, stealing only from the greedy. His voice drops low. Some say he's already passed through. He pauses, locking eyes with you. Last night. You try not to choke on your stew. In the afternoon, a notice appears nailed to a tree. Wanted Bushy Bill, 5'9", wearing a lizard skin hat, smells of whiskey and regret. Below that, reward. A pint and Peg's famous pie, no guarantees of meat type. That night you bury your flake deeper, add a few pebbles to the pouch for weight. Barbara pecks anyone who gets within 3 feet. She's promoted to chief of security. As the stars stretch overhead and the moon rises like a saucer of spilled milk, you lie back and listen. Somewhere a horse neighs. Somewhere a harmonica wheezes out a sad tune. Somewhere a possum wrestles with a boot it doesn't own. You smile. Whether bushrangers are real or just colorful campfire nonsense, they add a certain spice to life on the diggings. Just enough fear to make you hide your stuff. Just enough thrill to make you feel alive. And honestly, you kinda hope one shows up. Just not tonight. The sun crests over the horizon with the warmth of a polite oven and the enthusiasm of someone who's had exactly 1 cup of tea and is trying their best. You stretch yawn and step outside to find Barbara, already pecking fiercely at a boot, yours thankfully. It's a good morning. And today you notice something rare. Women. Not many, not loudly present, but there they are tending to stalls, striding through tents, hammering boards, into what might become a bakery, or a school, or a place that finally sells tea that doesn't taste like regret. Compared to the sea of beards, flannel, and wild eyes that fill most of the goldfields, these women move with a kind of fierce purpose that makes even the rowdiest digger pause and reconsider his posture. You follow the smell of actual bread to a canvas-topped structure run by a woman named Edie. Short, broad-shouldered with flour permanently caked in her eyebrows, Edie runs the most successful operation in a 10-tent radius. Her scones are legendary, and her stare has reduced drunken miners to trembling puddles of "yes, ma'am." You try to order politely. "Morning, Edie, you get one scone and no gossip." She snaps. You nod. "Fair." She hands you the scone like she's handing over a contract. It's still warm. You bite in, and for a brief, golden moment, everything in the world makes sense. Women on the goldfields weren't just bakers or wives. They were storekeepers, midwives, teachers, herbalists, laundry operators, boarding house managers, and sometimes just as tough in the dirt as any pickaxe-wielding man. You meet one named Joan, who claims she once cracked a gold nugget in two with a frying pan because it looked smug. She runs a small tavern behind her tent, where she only serves drinks in chipped teacups and insists you quote Shakespeare while ordering. You fumble through "Shall I compare thee to a too slow," she says. You get warm ale. Historians still argue whether women on the goldfields were sidelined or secret backbones of the entire enterprise. The truth is, they were both. For every woman dragged reluctantly into the chaos by her husband, there was another who charged in willingly with a dream, a skillet, and a list of things she would not tolerate. And then there are the performers. One evening, a makeshift stage appears, 2 crates, a sheet, and some lamps. A woman named Celeste takes the platform in a velvet dress that has absolutely no business existing in a place where dust is considered a condiment. Her voice rings out clear and bold, singing a tune that silences even the most hardened miners. The song is about a gold digger who falls in love with a possum and dies tragically in a bushfire while reciting poetry. It's absurd, emotional, and somehow exactly what everyone needed. By the end, half the crowd is in tears, the other half is clapping like their hands owe rent, and someone's goat has learned to harmonize. You speak to Celeste afterward. She's smart, wry, and smells faintly of eucalyptus and mystery. "Men dig for gold," she says. "I sing for it." Then she winks and vanishes into the crowd like a soap bubble made of sass. There's also Rosie, who brews tinctures for anything that ails you, bruises heartbreak, or an unfortunate run-in with a rampaging billy goat. Her stall smells like mint and mystery, and if you ask the right questions, she'll sell you something labeled possibly legal sleep tea. You ask the wrong question. You get chamomile. Each of these women is a world unto herself, carving a life from dirt hope and whatever rusty nails they can salvage. They face all the hardship the men do, plus the complications of doing it in corsets, society's expectations, and a complete lack of pockets. Seriously, where do they put anything? You hear stories of women who struck gold first, who ran teams of workers, who sued corrupt claim officers and won. One reportedly fenced off a section of river and charged others to pan there. And when a man tried to jump her claim, she hit him with a fish. And then there are those you don't hear much about, indigenous women, Chinese women and women of color navigating the same treacherous paths, but with twice the obstacles and half the recognition. Their stories drift around the camp in whispers, often half told, but never forgotten. That night, you help Edie move flour sacks. She lets you carry 2 before declaring you adequate. You beam with pride. She hands you another scone. "Don't drop this one." Around the fire, Celeste sings again. Joan recites lines from Macbeth. Rosie hands out tea. You sit among them, warm-fed and strangely honored. Barbara the chicken perches on your knee like she's always belonged there. You watch the sparks rise into the night and realize that the goldfields are not just a place of grit and fortune-seeking. They're also full of quiet revolutions, whispered challenges, and the strength of people who came not for gold, but for something better. You fall asleep that night with a crumb of scone in your beard and a dream of velvet dresses in dusty towns. You wake to the delicate clinking of porcelain, which in the goldfields is either an absurd hallucination or someone's about to serve tea. Turns out it's both. A few tenths over an older Chinese man is carefully arranging a tea set on a flat rock. Not tin cups, not billy cans. Real honest-to-Confucius porcelain, blue and white, slightly chipped, but still proud. He's boiling water in a kettle that shines like it's seen polish more recently than pain. You shuffle over intrigued, and he gestures politely for you to sit. You don't say no to tea when it's offered with such calm dignity, especially not in a camp where the beverage is usually bark water with regret foam. He introduces himself with a smile. Chen. You nod and offer your name. He pours. The scent is floral, earthy, and surprisingly hopeful. You take a sip, and oh, it's the best thing that's ever touched your mouth, narrowly edging out Edie's scones, and that one time you accidentally ate a sugared beetle. Good, Chen asks. You nod so enthusiastically your hat falls off. He chuckles, then returns to his quiet tea ceremony, pouring with the grace of someone who doesn't just make tea, he understands it. A few other diggers shuffle up curious. Most are polite. A few make uncomfortable jokes. You wince. You've heard the murmurs. The Chinese diggers called celestials by the newspapers and too quiet to trust by people who've never successfully cooked rice are a minority in the fields. But their presence is growing. And so is the tension. Historians still argue whether the unease was truly about cultural differences or just the age-old fear of being outdug by someone better organized. The Chinese camps were known for working together in teams, methodically turning up gold in spots others had long abandoned. Their work ethic was legendary. Their noodles were better than yours. Some diggers didn't take kindly to that. You watch as Chen offers tea to a passing man who declines with a sneer. "Drinking leaves won't find you gold, mate," he mutters. Chen smiles serenely and pours himself another cup. You want to say something clever, something kind. But instead you just refill your own cup and raise it to him in silent thanks. Later you take a walk past the Chinese section of the diggings. It's cleaner, quieter, with neat rows of tents and tools stored with military precision. There are vegetable patches. Actual cabbage. You feel personally insulted having tried to grow onions last week and ended up with 3 soggy worms and an irate toad. The Chinese diggers chant softly as they work a rhythm in the air like water over stones. Some wear straw hats. Others have long braids. They nod politely as you pass, though most keep working. Their eyes are tired like yours, but hold something deeper. Discipline, perhaps. Or maybe they're just really good at pretending they don't hear the nonsense shouted from across the ridge. Because there is nonsense. Ugly nonsense. Posters pinned to trees, rumors, talk of limiting numbers. You hear whispers about rocks thrown at night tools stolen, even fights breaking out near the claim markers. Still Chen offers tea every morning. Still they dig. Still they endure. You ask around and hear legends. Of a Chinese cook who baked meat pies so good that a trooper wept openly. Of a healer who cured a digger's foot rot with herbs and a slap. Of a man named Ming who once panned up a nugget the size of a hen's egg, then gave half of it away to the family next door whose baby was sick. None of those stories appear in the papers. That night, Chen invites you back. He has a small lantern, lit its glow soft and golden. He pours again, and this time he adds something from a tiny jar, ginger maybe. You sip. It tastes like safety. He looks at you thoughtfully. "Gold is not in the ground," he says slowly. "It is in the patience. You nod, trying to remember that the next time your pan comes up full of angry mud. A few other diggers pass by and stare. One of them makes a joke you won't repeat here. You glare, but Chen just smiles an unbothered mountain-shaped smile. They are loud, he says, because they are empty. You take another sip. Barbara roosts beside you, peering into the teacup with suspicion. That night the wind howls. The tent flaps snap. Somewhere someone shouts about claim jumpers. But you lie still warm from ginger tea, and wiser than you were before. The world doesn't get better all at once. Sometimes it begins with a shared drink, and a refusal to hate loudly, and a really solid brew. You wake to cannon fire. At least it sounds like cannon fire, low booms echoing off the hills, sharp cracks splitting the air, and the unmistakable shriek of someone yelling, "My tent." You scramble outside, tripping over your boot, and landing face first in a misplaced cabbage. Barbara leaps from your shoulder with a squawk and flutters off in the direction of the chaos. Smoke is rising. Dust clouds swirl. A flag dark blue with a white cross and 5 stars flaps atop a makeshift wooden tower. Beneath it, a gathering of diggers' arms, folded eyes, hard voices rising in anger. You've wandered straight into the birth of a rebellion. This, as you later learn, is the beginning of the Eureka Stockade, a name that will go down in history, or depending on the historian, go sideways with a caveat. It started with licenses, always the licenses. The diggers are fed up paying fees to a government that doesn't represent them, being hunted down like rabbits by troopers who seem to enjoy the chase just a little too much. So they built a stockade. Not a fortress exactly, more like a big wooden fence with dreams of grandeur. It surrounds a patch of ground that's now become a symbol of resistance. You stand at the edge, unsure whether to join or hide behind a shrub, like in the good old days. Someone notices your confusion. A man with a thick Irish accent claps you on the back and says, "We're done digging for gold and getting dirt from the crown." You nod like you totally understand what's happening. He hands you a hammer. You politely hand it to someone more coordinated. Within the stockade, energy buzzes. Miners organize. They drill with wooden rifles and the odd bent musket. They hold meetings by lamplight voices echoing off canvas walls. A priest speaks. So does a baker. Even Edie shows up with a tray of protest scones. She smacks a trooper in the face with one later. Iconic. Historians still argue whether the Eureka Rebellion was a true democratic uprising or a chaotic squabble that just happened to involve gunpowder and excellent branding. But what can't be denied is that something shifted. A sense of us against them, camp against colony, shovel against saber. You drift along the perimeter of the stockade that evening, trying not to look like you're waiting for your dinner to cook. You overhear plans whispered through beards. You see men sharpening tools into weapons. You even spot someone trying to attach wheels to a bathtub just in case we need to charge. There's tension, but also camaraderie. Someone offers you a flask. You sip. It's a homemade spirit that may also double as lantern fuel. You thank them with tears in your eyes. And then there's the flag. That Southern Cross stitched under moonlight, hoisted with hope, glinting like silver against the dark sky. It's mesmerizing. For a moment it feels like every pickaxe swing, every frozen night, every soggy sock has led to this. Barbara naturally chooses this moment to poop on your shoulder. The next morning is misty, oddly quiet. You wake to birdsong instead of bellowing, which is already suspicious. Then come the sounds: marching boots, horses, clinking sabers. You peer through the fog and see them: red and blue coats, glinting helmets, government troopers moving in rows, disciplined and grim. There's no warning, no negotiation, just gunshots. The stockade erupts in chaos. You hit the ground, diggers scatter, men scream, Smoke pours into the sky like it's trying to escape. You crawl behind a barrel and clutch Barbara close. She pecks your face offended. You're both terrified. The fight is over in minutes. Blood stains the dust. Tents burn. The flag is ripped down. The silence after is louder than the gunfire ever was. You stand slowly shaking. Around you, dazed faces. Injured men. Others are already being arrested. Some stare blankly at the ruined fence as if wondering how everything ended so fast. Later they say over 20 diggers died. Some say fewer. Some say more. Historians still argue about the numbers, the leadership, the intentions. But you were there. You saw the eyes. You felt the fear. You smelled the smoke. And you know it mattered. In the days after there's mourning. But there's also movement. The story of Eureka spreads like wildfire. People talk. Papers print. The government takes notice. Eventually, months later when the dust has settled and the wounds have scabbed over, the license system is scrapped. A mining permit replaces it. Cheaper, simpler, representation improves. Slowly, awkwardly, something resembling fairness emerges from the ashes. You visit the spot where the stockade once stood. A few charred boards, a button, a boot. Barbara clucks quietly. You sit beside her and place a small stone near the remains. Not a monument. Just a marker. A whisper that something happened here. Something that changed everything. You are lying flat on your back, in the dust shirt, half-buttoned boots mismatched, and your left leg twitching from what may or may not be an encounter with a rabid beetle. The only thought looping in your mind is I should not have eaten that third spoonful of stew. Barbara pecks your elbow, possibly to check if you're still alive. Welcome to your first serious encounter with the camp doctor. The clinic, if one dares to call it that, is a tent held together with string curtain rods, and what you suspect might be licorice. The doctor, known to all as Doc Tom, is both terrifying and comforting, in the way a lightning storm is beautiful from a distance. He wears a coat, far too large spectacles held together with wire and optimism, and carries a satchel full of things that clink in concerning ways. His beard is fluffy, but his eyes are sharp, like if Santa Claus had a side hustle in battlefield triage. You stumble into his tent, groaning. Doc Tom looks up and says, "Ah, you've got that third spoon stew regret posture. Sit. Or collapse. Either way, I'll get to you." You collapse. He takes your pulse, nods, and pours a shot of whiskey. You assume it's for you. He drinks it himself. Just for calibration, he explains. Treatment begins. He produces a metal instrument that looks like it should belong to a blacksmith. He gently presses it against your ribs. Tender, you shriek. Excellent, he says. You expect a prescription, maybe bandages. Instead, he hands you a bottle of something labeled Camp Tonic with a hand-drawn picture of a leech and a dancing dingo. What's in it, you ask? Mostly licorice vinegar and optimism, he replies. And maybe a clove. Historians still argue whether frontier medicine was a form of healing, a confidence trick, or simply very enthusiastic guessing. In Doc Tom's case, it's all three. But oddly enough, people get better. Not always, but often enough to keep him in business. You hear about his remedies: cough syrup made from eucalyptus and beer, scurvy pills fashioned from dried orange peel, and what he insists is chalk. He once reset a man's shoulder by quoting poetry while applying pressure with a frying pan. The man still walks lopsided but claims he sees colors better now. There's a herbalist camp nearby, too, run by a trio of women who know every leaf, root, and suspicious-looking mushroom within a 10-mile radius. They operate in tandem with Doc Tom, like herbal backup dancers. Between them, ailments either vanish or become stories. That week, you help around the clinic while recovering. You fetch water-clean tools and prevent Barbara from pecking at the morphine supply. You witness an alarming number of injuries, most involving pickaxes, overconfidence, or tragic misunderstandings with goats. One man arrives with what appears to be a spoon lodged in his ear. Another limps in shouting, "I told her I liked her damper more than her scones." Everyone nods solemnly. Love is dangerous here. Doc Tom lets you assist with a bandage. You wrap it backward and upside down. He nods anyway. "Very modern," he says. "Might catch on. You start noticing how many diggers walk with a limp, a scar, or a grin that's missing a few teeth." Injuries are as much a part of camp life as panning or possum stew. The difference between prospector and patient is often one misplaced boot step. There are tales of people who refused treatment. "It's just a scratch," they said. Famous last words. One man claimed he could fix his own broken finger with a stick and sheer willpower. He now points in 3 directions at once. You ask Doc Tom about leeches. He grins. Nature's vacuum cleaner. You either fear them or respect them. Or both. You don't ask to see his leech jar. He shows you anyway. It jiggles ominously. And yet for all the rough edges and odd methods, there's something gentle in his work. He listens. He hums while stitching wounds. He tells terrible jokes at just the right moment. Once you watch him sit with a feverish boy all night, reading aloud from a waterlogged book of Scottish poetry. The boy recovers. The accent does not. Historians don't write much about the medical tents of the goldfields. They focus on the strikes, the politics, the conflict. But here in this mismatched patchwork tent smelling of herbs, sweat, and whiskey, real life quietly pulses. You ask Doc Tom why he came out here. He shrugs. "Back home I was one doctor among hundreds. Here I'm the doctor. Also someone told me there'd be pie. Eventually your stew poisoning fades. Your vision stabilizes. You no longer feel like your bones are trying to declare independence. On your last day in the clinic, Doc Tom hands you a little tin of salve. 'For the journey,' he says. 'Don't eat it.' You nod solemn. Barbara steals a cotton ball on the way out. You return to your tent with renewed respect for the fragility of the human body, the strength of those who patch it, and the miracle of surviving long enough to limp back to your shovel. You crouch beside your tent pen in one hand, blank scrap of paper in the other, and absolutely no idea how to start your letter home. "Dear Mum, I'm alive, slightly less covered in leeches than last week, and I may or may not own a chicken." You look at Barbara. She blinks slowly, as if to say, "Only write the important parts." Writing letters from the diggings is an emotional minefield. You want to tell the truth, but not the whole truth. There's no need to mention the stew incident, the fire that wasn't entirely your fault, or the brief moment where you thought you'd struck gold, but it turned out to be melted tin from someone's kettle. Still you manage a few lines. A greeting, some hope, a vivid but harmless description of camp life that skips over the tooth extractions and possum-based cuisine. You fold it carefully, slide it into an envelope that smells faintly of licorice salve, and begin the next challenge mailing it. The Goldfields don't have a post office so much as a post area, a table under a crooked awning watched over by a man named Reg, who wears 2 monocles and speaks only in limericks. "Got a letter. Place it here. If it's to France, then have no fear. If it's to Perth, you'll wait till rebirth. And please don't lick the goat's left ear." "Yes. There's also a goat." You ask about postage. Reg points to a scribbled sign. Letters to London 2 shillings. Brisbane 1 shilling. Tasmania free if sung aloud. You pay up hand over your precious letter and watch Reg place it delicately into a leather satchel, which is promptly tied to the goat's back. Historians still argue whether the goat mail system was a form of genuine bush ingenuity or just a prank that got wildly out of hand. Either way, there are documented cases of correspondence arriving with suspicious hoof prints and faint nibble marks. Some diggers don't bother with letters at all. They hire messengers, kids, traders, or that one man with the wheelbarrow and a deep sense of direction. Others scrawl notes on bark or fabric scraps and toss them into passing wagons with whispered pleas to tell Ma, "I'm not dead." You ask Reg about delivery times. He shrugs and says, "Depends on the goat." Later that week, you receive a reply, your first. The envelope is battered with what appears to be jam on one corner and a mysterious feather stuck to the back. The handwriting is unmistakable, your mum's swirling with effort and affection. She writes about home, how the cat still hates everyone, the garden is flourishing, and your Uncle Alf tried to invent a steam-powered hat again. She's proud of you. She's worried. She sends a pair of socks and a stern reminder to eat vegetables, not mysterious stew. You wipe your eyes with the back of your hand, then quickly blame Barbara when a fellow digger glances over. The camp's letter tent becomes a ritual for many. You pass it daily, watching faces light up or fall. A man named Joe receives a letter written in rhyming couplets from his wife every fortnight. He reads them aloud with flourishes. One begins, "Though gold you seek in dust and stream, remember love you still can dream." We all cheered. One woman opens her letter, sniffs it, and sighs. "Still smells like the bakery." Another man bursts into tears over a toddler's drawing of what appears to be a dragon eating a policeman. "My boy's a genius," he says. But not all letters bring joy. You overhear whispers of bad news, of goodbyes, of things that can't be undone. A man packs up quietly, one morning letter still in hand, and walks out of camp. No one asks where. Some things are private, even out here. You begin writing more regularly. To Mum, to a friend back home, once even to yourself, just to remember what your handwriting looked like. You write in the evenings, candle stub flickering ink smudging with the wind. You write about gold and goats and stars so bright they hum in your teeth. And one day, unexpectedly, you receive a parcel. You tear it open like a child at Christmas, and there it is, a book, a real one, leather-bound, a bit musty and full of poetry. There's also a tin of biscuits and a note. Thought you might need something beautiful. Love, Mum. You hold it like treasure. Not gold, but something rarer. Something that reminds you who you were before your boots filled with mud and your skin forgot what softness was. You read a few lines aloud, Barbara nestled beside you, the words curling into the night like smoke. And for a moment, just a moment, you forget the dust, the ache, the cold creek mornings. Because someone somewhere sent you words. And they arrived, goat nibble or not. You're standing at the edge of the camp road watching dust trail up behind a wagon, moving at the speed of mild determination. Two troopers ride alongside it, straight-backed and sunburnt hands resting lightly on their rifles. Atop the wagon sits a strong box, solid locked, and definitely too shiny to be subtle. This is the gold escort. Every few weeks, these convoys trundle through the diggings collecting the hard-earned flakes and nuggets of the hopeful. Miners queue like schoolchildren, each with a little pouch or folded handkerchief, ready to deposit their treasure in exchange for a receipt, and the shaky promise that it will someday reach a bank. You watch as a man with shaking hands hands over a nugget that glints like a dropped sunbeam. He's crying just a little. Could be joy. Could be relief. Could be the onions in Edie's stew. The escort guards it all dreams fortunes, and a frankly absurd number of spelling errors in the accompanying paperwork. They keep their expressions neutral, but their eyes scan constantly up the ridges, down the tracks, across the faces of every bystander. Everyone knows what's at stake. Because where there's gold, there's always someone planning how to not dig for it. Bushrangers again. You hear murmurs someone tried to intercept the last escort near Bendigo. Another group buried the road in logs, then leapt out in masks, shouting, "Surrender your glitter," which, according to eyewitnesses, slightly ruined the intimidation factor. Historians still argue whether these attempted robberies were common or merely overblown by newspapers eager for scandal and subscription sales. What's clear is this: wherever the escort rides, a trail of legends follows. You fall in step with the convoy just for a while, marveling at the strange choreography, troopers on either side, one in front, one at the rear, all moving with the tension of men who've slept too often, with one eye open. The strongbox rattles on the wagon bed like a heartbeat. But it's not all troopers' intention. As you pass one checkpoint, you see a man in robes step forward, a priest maybe. He blesses the escort in Latin sprinkles water and offers a strangely knowing smile. The troopers nod politely. The wagon driver glances at his boots. You notice the priest's cross is silver, and his belt pouch looks suspiciously full. Later, someone tells you a rumor that same priest was spotted 3 towns over officiating a wedding between 2 goats for 5 shillings and a meat pie. He's a chancer, they say. Calls himself Father Fergus, but most folks call him the Holy Hustler. You're not sure whether to laugh or genuflect. Gold makes everyone behave strangely. Honest men guard it, desperate men plot to steal it, and clever ones find ways to skim off the top without ever lifting a shovel. There are whispers of clipped nuggets, gold shavings subtly removed before being weighed, of bankers who accidentally misplace a deposit, of men who sell fake nuggets made from lead and polish claiming they were blessed by lightning. And then there's Samuel. You meet him in the mess tent, tall, tidy, with the look of a man who's never once had stew stuck in his beard. He claims to be a gold consultant, which is not a real job, but sounds fancy enough to fool just about anyone. He offers advice for a fee. Where to dig? Where not to dig? What color rock screams jackpot? What gold feels like? You pay him 2 shillings to analyze your latest flake. He holds it up, squints, sniffs it, then licks it dramatically. This one, he declares, was born beneath a weeping gum tree under the Capricorn sky. She's a quiet flake, fickle, but faithful. You thank him and immediately regret it. Still, the idea of escorting gold away from the chaos feels comforting. You imagine your own little flake nestled among others in that iron box, rumbling away toward safety, toward future plans, toward a home with floorboards and walls that don't flap in the wind. Back in camp, you hear stories. One man claims he once rode with the escort sat beside the strongbox gun in hand. Felt like guarding the Ark of the Covenant, he says, only with fewer plagues and more goat droppings. Another man swears the troopers once fought off an ambush using nothing but stern looks and very loud harmonica solos. That one may be exaggerated. Or not. This is the gold fields. You begin to wonder what happens when the gold leaves. Do people stay the same? Or does it take something with it? Hope, ambition, reason? You decide it's a bit of both. That night, as the convoy disappears into the horizon, you write in your journal. You draw the wagon, the troopers, the glitter of the strongbox. You doodle the priest's goat wedding, and Samuel sniffing your nugget. You draw Barbara wearing a helmet and guarding a pile of pebbles labeled practice fortune. Then you sit by the fire and smile. Gold comes and goes. So do goats, priests, and mysterious consultants. But the stories, they stay. The scent of something burning wafts through your tent. For one brief, hopeful moment, you think it might be someone else's turn to ruin breakfast. Then you remember you lit the fire. You rush outside to find your tin can oven gently belching smoke, while Barbara sits nearby watching like a judgmental grandmother. Inside the can, half a loaf of what you hoped would be bread, and what has now become a small charcoal sculpture of despair. Camp cooking, it turns out, is more art than science, and your medium is failure. You're not alone. Across the goldfields, diggers gather around fires with pans, pots, and dubious ingredients. The culinary staples flour, salt water, and creativity. Sometimes someone manages to add a carrot, that someone becomes a local celebrity for the week. You wander to the communal kitchen, a patch of ground, where half the camp's hopeful chefs gather to trade tips, burn things, and bond over mutual stomach distress. Toothless Mick is frying something that smells like ambition and shoe leather. He grins. It's damper-mate, real Aussie stuff. If it don't bounce, it ain't done. You take a bite. It bounces, Damper a simple bread of flour water, and maybe baking soda if your fancy is a Goldfield staple. It's baked in coals under rocks in tin cans, and in one case inside a hollow log that later burst into flames and caused a mild panic involving 3 tents and a very confused emu. Historians still argue whether the food on the Goldfields was basic but hearty or culinary punishment with a spoon. Most agree that flavor was less important than survival, and if your stew didn't taste like mud and regret, it was probably just unfinished. One man swears by his secret ingredient, Vegemite. Discovered it myself, he claims. Scraped it off a rusted pan. Tastes like power. You decline politely. Some miners eat from tin cans so frequently they start using them as cups hats, and once, reportedly, an engagement ring holder. Others make soup from whatever's available, beans roots, the occasional rabbit, and according to rumor, one very unlucky hat. You meet a fellow named Jasper who believes in presentation. His tent is adorned with empty wine bottles and a menu chalked onto a piece of slate. Today's special charred beans in ash reduction. You order some. It's terrible. You tip him anyway. Then there's charcoal. You learn quickly that charcoal isn't just for your ruined bread, it's also your toothbrush. That's right. Camp hygiene meets innovation in the form of blackened sticks used to scrub teeth. Keeps the bugs off, someone tells you. You're not sure which bugs they mean. You use it anyway. Your teeth look haunted, but at least your breath smells like campfire and optimism. You try your hand at stew again. This time some beans, 2 carrots, and what you think might be a parsnip. Toothless. Mick peeks in. That a root or a foot, he asks. You stir faster. Barbara contributes by chasing off a possum trying to steal your pot lid. She earns 3 kernels of corn and a small cheer from the neighbors. Cooking in camp is about compromise. You lower your standards. You embrace failure. You celebrate anything edible. And when something actually tastes good, even slightly, you share it like treasure. You remember the first time you tasted Edie's real bread, the warmth, the crust, the butter, real butter melting into golden crumbs. It was like biting into a sunrise. You wept. She pretended not to notice. Later that night, someone starts a bush bake-off. Everyone brings their best damper ash cakes, mystery meat pies. Judging is done by volume of chewing and least number of surprised screams. Joan, the Shakespearean innkeeper, wins with something she calls tempest tart, which may contain plums or possibly regret. You never find out. Around the fire, you share food and stories. You taste someone's travel biscuits so hard they double as tent stakes. You try a homemade jam that tastes like boiled socks, but with a hint of raspberry. You hear about a digger who once roasted a turkey. Where'd he find a turkey, someone asks. No one knows. The bird just showed up. You think about how far you've come. From watery gruel to slightly burnt stew. From stealing sugar to inventing your own spice mix, which is for legal reasons just salt and crushed mint leaves. And then, like a miracle, you bake your first edible damper. It's a little smoky, a little crunchy, but it's bread. Real warm, honest-to-Barbara bread. You take a bite. It doesn't bounce. You tear it in half and give the rest to a passing kid who's been eating bark for a week. He grins, yells. It's soft, and runs off like he just found El Dorado. You sit back, the stars above smoke curling upward, bellyful. Maybe you didn't find gold today, but you made bread. And out here, that's almost the same thing. The fire crackles softly as night settles over the diggings. The stars emerge bright, unfiltered, and scattered like spilled salt across black velvet. You've finished your stew only mildly burnt. This time Barbara is roosting quietly on a folded shirt, and around you a hush begins to spread. This is the hour when ghost stories come alive. You sit near the largest of the communal campfires, the one that somehow always attracts the best liars, storytellers, and part-time philosophers. Tonight someone is dragged over a stump for a makeshift stage. Others bring tea or mystery tonics in mugs that steam ominously. There's a violinist softly tuning in the background, though no one asked them to. Toothless Mick begins, of course. Years ago he rasps dramatically, twirling a non-existent mustache out near Mount Alexander. A miner struck a hole so deep it opened a door straight to the underworld. He pauses. He came back up speaking Latin and missing his boots. Everyone nods gravely. You know the routine by now, half history, half hysteria, all generously soaked in exaggeration. Someone passes around a tin of questionable scones. You take one. It's more rock than bread, but you chew carefully so as not to crack a tooth and join the doctor's leech queue tomorrow. Then Joan stands hair-pinned back, eyes gleaming. There was once a woman named Elsie, a widow who panned alone by the creek. Never said a word. But every full moon she sang to the water. She leans forward, and the water sang back. Historians still argue whether stories like these were born from superstition loneliness or just the side effects of drinking boiled eucalyptus. But on nights like this, when the wind moves just right and your back aches from the day's labor, it's hard not to believe. You offer a story, too half-real, half-ridiculous, about the time you found a possum in your pan, and it threw gold at you to be left alone. You pantomime the event. Barbara clucks disapprovingly. The crowd laughs. Nearby, someone tells the tale of the shimmering digger, a miner who found a nugget too big to carry and was doomed to wander forever trying to push it uphill with his forehead. Still out there, they whisper. Still shimmering. Another man speaks of a ghostly trooper riding silently through campfires at midnight, checking for expired licenses. He rattles his chains and smells faintly of red ink and stale biscuits. The violinist starts a slow, eerie tune. The perfect soundtrack for exaggeration. One woman tells a quiet, lovely tale about her grandfather's spirit, visiting her dreams to warn her of bad claims. Saved my bacon more than once, she says. And my actual bacon, too. There's something soothing about these shared whispers, fabricated or not. It's a kind of collective exhale. In the light of day, the goldfields are sharp, full of heat tools, labor, and blisters. But by firelight, they become softer. Stranger. More human. You remember one of the first stories you ever heard here of a miner who claimed the trees near Creswick whispered directions to hidden gold, if you listened just right. At the time, you'd laughed. But now, well, you do tend to pause near certain trees more than others. Barbara, for instance, refuses to walk past one particular stump, just stops dead and stares. You asked her about it once. She blinked and pecked your shoelace. Not helpful, but still vaguely unsettling. Some of the ghost stories aren't even spooky, they're funny. Like the tale of Benny the Barefoot, who walked into a haunted mine shaft and emerged an hour later wearing 2 pairs of boots and a monocle. Or the one about the haunted frying pan that only burned toast shaped like Queen Victoria. The stories blur together, part dream, part memory, part wishful thinking. You lose track of time, your eyes half-lidded, the warmth of the fire pooling around your feet like a blanket. And then, silence. One voice cuts through the crowd. An older man you've never seen before. Deep-set eyes, long beard, voice like gravel sliding through honey. I saw her, he says. The lady in white, standing by the old well past Kookaburra Hill. She was weeping, gold falling from her sleeves. When I spoke to her, she turned and said, "All who dig must give," and vanished. No one speaks, even the violinist stops mid-bow. You shiver. Because out here in the land of sweat and shovels, it doesn't take much to believe. Not when you've seen shadows move oddly. Not when your pickaxe hits something strange. Not when the wind calls your name just once too often. Eventually, the fire dies down. People yawn, stretch, wander back to tents. You stay for a moment longer staring into the embers, wondering if anything you heard tonight was true. Or if all of it was. Barbara sleeps beside you, head tucked under wing. The stars shimmer above, the coals glow below, and somewhere in the trees a kookaburra laughs. But only once. The morning comes quietly with a low mist clinging to the earth, like the diggings are trying to keep one last secret. You step out into the cool hush, feeling the difference immediately. There's something in the air, stillness maybe. Or an ending. It's time to move on. Your tent, patched and sagging, sits there like an old friend that's seen things and refuses to speak of them. You begin the slow, thoughtful process of packing, rolling up your bedroll, folding your spare shirt. Yes, the one with only 2 burn holes brushing off your hat, and coaxing Barbara into her travel crate with a trail of scone crumbs and empty promises. The goldfields were never meant to be permanent. They were a fever, a rush, a rolling tide of people tents, hopes, and pans. Some found fortune, some didn't. But almost everyone eventually felt the pull to leave, to chase a new field, a quieter life, a rumor. You walk through camp with your swag slung over one shoulder. Around you, others are doing the same. Some stay, some wave goodbye. Some don't even notice you're going. The mess tent smells like overcooked beans and farewells. Edie nods from her bakery, pressing dough with more force than necessary. You think she'll miss you, or she's just always angry. Toothless Mick claps you on the back. Don't die, he says, smiling. Or if you do it somewhere with less dust. You laugh genuinely. It feels good. You trade your last damper for a hand-drawn map, a possible route to another field, where the water runs clear and the flakes shine bright, and maybe the stew doesn't fight back. Barbara rides in your bag like royalty, her head occasionally popping out to glare at passing wildlife. You stop one last time at the tree where the old man told his story of the lady in white. You leave a small stone at its base, just like you did at the Eureka site. A quiet thank you. A small goodbye. Historians still argue whether the gold rushes were worth it, whether the wealth found justified, the lives lost, the lands scarred, the cultures disrupted, whether those who left richer were better off or simply heavier with the burden of what they'd seen. You can't say. But you know what you carry. A flake of gold carefully hidden in your sock, a battered spoon, a few letters from home creased and reread, and stories, so many stories, of scones and ghosts, of goats and troopers, of friendship and bushrangers and stew that may have once been sentient. The road out of camp is long and rutted. Wagons creak, horses sigh. You walk with steady steps, boots worn thin but somehow still loyal. You pass a group of new arrivals, bright-eyed, overdressed, smelling of soap and optimism. You nod. One asks any gold left, you grin. Only if you believe in sneezy wombats. They stare. Barbara squawks. You move on. And with every step, the camp fades behind you. The smoke, the noise, the laughter, the swearing, the smell of half-cooked beans, all of it drifts into memory. You feel lighter. Not richer, not poorer, just changed. A few miles out, you stop for water and look back. Nothing remains but a dust cloud and a sky so blue it almost forgives everything. You sit for a moment sharing a crust of bread with Barbara, watching a lizard do lizard things with the confidence of someone who's never panned a day in its life. Then you rise, hoist your swag, and take the next step. Because the road doesn't end here, and neither do the stories. Now, as your eyes grow heavy, and your thoughts drift like mist rising from a quiet creek. Imagine yourself walking slowly down that dusty path, boots soft against the earth, the air cool and still. The noise of the camp fades behind you, fiddle tunes, clanking pans, laughter through tents, distant echoes of footsteps, once hurried, now hushed. The stars above stretch wide, and slow old companions keeping gentle watch. You feel your breath settle. Your heartbeat falls into step with the rhythm of the road. Your pack is lighter than you expected. Not because you've left things behind, but because you've gathered just enough to carry forward. A memory of tea shared under lantern light, the taste of burnt bread that still brought joy, the sound of stories by the fire, ridiculous and tender and true. There is no rush now, no pan to swirl, no shovel to lift, just the soft shuffle of your feet, and the knowing that you've been a part of something odd, dusty, difficult, but deeply human. And if just before you sleep you think you hear the creak of a wagon, or the chuckle of a kookaburra far off in the trees, or a chicken clucking softly in your dreams, well, you've just been on a journey to a place where gold wasn't the only thing worth finding. So let it go. Let the diggings rest. Let your breath grow long, your muscles loosen, your mind soften into stillness. Sleep now, traveler. The road is quiet, and morning can wait.